I want to talk about this because I think he raises some very interesting points and questions here. He's a friend of mine, good guy. In this video, from his latest viewer comments, I don't know if he coined this term, but I really like this idea of desktop metal. He raises some interesting questions about desktop metal and the death of the band. Let's watch this, and then I will give you my thoughts.
Desktop metal. Now that is a great subgenre name for all the drum sampled bedroom guitar recorded music for everyone that thinks they're the next Polyphia or Animals as leaders.
Oh, I don't know if I'd go that far. Hey, here's the thing. There's nothing wrong with dreaming big. For some people, it actually happens. I mean, like everybody in every fucking major metal band.
I mean, who would have ever thought that Polyphia would be as big as they are? Like, last I looked, I think they had like 700,000 monthly Spotify listeners or something. Who's to say that you couldn't be the next Polyphia? There's no reason.
Throughout the history of the genre, probably started out as a kid in his bedroom fucking playing his guitar. No,
exactly.
It's great to aspire to that. It's great to want big things to happen. You've got to put the work in, obviously. And just the way how rent is going these days, I don't know.
I mean, this is a great point. And the first thing I looked is, where is Seattle? I see Seattle is like not much cheaper than New York. It's more expensive than LA, more expensive than Singapore. It's true. It is expensive just to fucking exist, especially in any of the cities that most musicians would want to live in.
How many people actually have the ability to, play with a live drummer anymore? It's fucking impossible to afford anywhere to live.
One of the things that lots of people like him would say is like, Gojira doesn't need programmed drums. Why do you? When you live in a city where it costs $4,000 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment, like it does in Seattle and LA and lots of other places, it's just not an option. So I've always found that kind of a dumb boomerish take from people who are like anti-drum sample. Burrito Cat, thank you very much.
Dream used to be get a job, work hard, have a family, own a home, all that shit. Now it's like work hard and then meet up with 3 other people and maybe you can split the rent. That's a great big shit sandwich that unfortunately a lot of young people are having to take a bite of. I'm not going to disparage people out there for sitting at their desktops writing music. Unfortunately, that's become the reality of the situation, and there's just no way to get together and afford a rehearsal space for a lot of people.
When you can barely afford the rent in your apartment, the idea of also, having a rehearsal space with this nice backline and stuff, it's crazy.
No easy answer for that question, but I'm definitely curious to hear your thoughts on where things are going. Very curious to hear that. Leave a comment below. Let's hear from you guys.
He made some good points there, and I just kind of wanted to kind of extend that and talk about also this idea of the death of the band, which he raises as well, because I think these two things go hand in hand. I don't think they're a bad thing. The idea of playing in a band is one of these just like sacred cows that exists in rock. Also, the idea that you have to play shows and you have to go on tour, and that albums are better than singles, and that bands are like the most important thing. These are like central kind of tenets of rockism that have been true for, decades, but that doesn't mean that they are always going to be true, or that they have to be true, or that if they stop being true, that's a bad thing. I really question whether bands need to exist in the future or not. If you want to be in a band, by all means do it, but there's a lot of reasons why a band might not make sense, and I wanted to just kind of talk about those. Number one is the economics of it. Second reason why it's difficult is just logistically. Musicians are not the easiest people in the world to work with, right? I mean,
that's what I always tell them. Like, no, you're playing it wrong. Duh.
Anybody that's been in a band has experienced this. It's hard enough to find people that you like on a personal level, that also have similar kind of taste in music to you, that are decent people, that will also show up on time, is a very small number of people, especially when we're talking about like prog and stuff like that. Like, how many drummers are out there that can play, gent in your city that also check all those boxes? Like, probably 2, if you're lucky. Just coordinating 4 or 5 people is really hard, especially when people have jobs and families and school and stuff like that. It's really hard. And then creatively, I think it's not necessarily ideal either. So you think of the perfect situation is being in a band with 3 or 4 or 5 other people that are like awesome humans that inspire you and all show up with great ideas and they all help write these songs and you guys sit in a room and jam and together you make this amazing piece of art that you guys all contributed to, right? But is that the real world? If you've ever been a band, that does not match reality, does it? There's the fucking bassist who barely knows how to play his shit and never has any ideas. And then there's the other guitarist who wants to do something completely different from the rest of the band. And then there's the vocalist that just wants to hog the spotlight all the time, and the drummer that overplays or that can't play the stuff that you want to write, blah, blah, blah.
I can make it big if I wanted to, but I don't want to put all the other guitarists to shame.
In reality, I would say that the creative compromises probably are more likely to be a net negative versus like the collaborations, unless you find a really truly special group of people, which is not very common. And then there's also the economic side of it. Like, it is hard enough to make money from music. We all know this, right? Let's say that you magically do make money on a tour, which most people don't. Most people lose money on tours. Let's say you do make a little bit of money on Spotify. Now you got to split that 5 ways. So if the band makes, let's say the band made $50,000 in a year, which most bands don't, and you split it 5 ways, that's $10,000, $6,000 each after taxes, $500 a month. $500 a month is cool, but definitely not anything that's like anywhere close to being able to live on it, right? As opposed to if you had one person who could just take that whole $50,000, well, maybe you could live off $50,000 a year, depending on where you live. That may not be a great living, or maybe it is, but splitting the money so many different ways makes it very difficult to survive as a band. That you have to earn 5 times as much money as a solo artist is very difficult. There's also marketing considerations, because as humans, we want to follow individuals, not groups. Another example of this is like Elon versus Tesla. The Tesla fans aren't following Tesla, the company. They're following Elon, the person. They don't care who like the head of product is at Tesla. To them, like, Elon is Tesla. It's just easier to promote one person than it is to promote 4 or 5 people. All of these trends are pointing towards the idea of what Glenn is talking about here as of desktop metal. This is the future. That doesn't mean bands are going to cease to exist. It doesn't mean that bands are bad. The trends have changed. 20 years ago, it was the norm to be in a band that all got in the same room together and played and signed to a label and blah, 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 did all that stuff. But it is a different world now. There is no need. If you want a great drummer, you can just program those drums. You definitely don't need a bassist, because a huge number of albums have programmed bass on it anyway. A lot of people don't know that, but it's true. You definitely don't need a bass player. Just program the bass or play it yourself. Either way, the desktop metal is the future. You have all the tools to make a professional quality recording in your bedroom. Tons of people do it. So the idea of a band is no longer the default, and I don't think it should be. And if you want to be in a band, by all means, do it. But just consider everything I said, and I think you're going to see a lot more of this. I mean, all this like TikTok pop punk is a great example of this.
Don't miss me, you're busy. It sucks that you're so pretty.
Those would have been bands 20 years ago, but now they're individuals. And when they go on tour, they can find people to play in their band. That's not a problem, or just use backing tracks, whatever. This is the world we live in now. And I think this idea of like desktop metal, metal is oftentimes kind of behind the trends in a lot of ways, but metal has been ahead of the curve on this one, especially like progressive metal and stuff, because this desktop metal thing has been around for almost 15 years now, with people like Misha from Periphery being kind of the template for that. And I expect to see more of it. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I think at the end of the day, what it is going to do is allow more people to make a living, a full-time living playing music or come close to that. And I think that's a good thing. I write all the music and stuff in Painted Devils. Shane writes and records all the lyrical content. There you go. I think that's another example. This will be duos like that. That he's talking about Shane Smith, the comedian, and his band is Painted Devils. I think you'll see a lot of that, where you have basically one person who is the guitarist / producer, and then another person who's the vocalist. I think you'll see a lot of that. And I think that's a great template. Honestly, it was kind of disappointing that hearing that Motionless in White never replaced live keys. I remember you making a one-off about live keys being worthless or something, but still I enjoy it more than a backing track. Yeah, I mean, of course, in a perfect world, we would all have like the best band in the world and blah, blah, blah. But if you have to pay for that person, it's going to cost you thousands of dollars to bring that person on this tour. Is it really worth spending thousands of dollars to have live keyboards on a tour? I would say no. There's more virtuoso instrumentalists today than ever, but the culture is different. So all of those players are now making solo content for the internet as opposed to looking for bands to join. Yeah, that's exactly right. You know, the Jason Richardsons and stuff like that of the world, they don't need to join a band anymore. Like, they can just have a following of their own. Well, as a drummer, I'm fucked. I don't think that's true either, because there's always going to be people who want to have live drums. I mean, like, Anup Sastry is a great example of this. He's not in any like full-time band, but he's always busy playing in other people's shit, touring. Like, session drums will be a big thing. So I think what you'll see is people writing and programming the drums like in a bedroom studio like this, and then sending them to someone like Anup to re-record.